Memphis, Tennessee. August 13, 1958. Gladys Presley was dying. Hepatitis had ravaged her body and the doctors had given her days to live. Elvis sat beside her hospital bed, holding her hand, watching the only person who'd ever truly believed in him fade away. Then he did something he'd never done before. He pulled out a portable record player, placed a record on the turntable, and said, "Mama, I made this just for you." What played next was a song Elvis had recorded in secret 2 weeks earlier, knowing his mother was dying. What he whispered to her as it played became the most heartbreaking moment anyone who witnessed it would ever forget. The woman who made Elvis possible. Gladys Love Smith Presley wasn't just Elvis's mother. She was his first believer, his protector, his anchor to reality in a world that would try to pull him in 1,000 directions. Born in 1912 in Pontotoc County, Mississippi, Gladys had grown up in crushing poverty. She'd worked in cotton fields, in factories, doing whatever labor she could find to help her family survive. She'd known hunger, eviction, the constant fear that came with having nothing. When she married Vernon Presley in 1933, she'd hoped for a better life. Instead, she got more poverty, more struggle, and in 1935, a pregnancy that would change her life forever. On January 8, 1935, Gladys gave birth to twin boys in a 2-room shotgun shack in Tupelo, Mississippi. The first baby, Jesse Garin, was stillborn. The second baby, Elvis Aaron, survived. Gladys never fully recovered from losing Jesse. She poured all the love she would have given 2 sons into the one who survived. She was fiercely protective of Elvis, almost smothering in her devotion. They had a bond that went beyond normal mother-son relationships, a connection so deep that people who knew them said it was like they could read each other's minds. Elvis and his mama had their own language, Vernon Presley would later say. They could communicate without words. She'd look at him and know what he was feeling. He'd look at her and know what she needed. I've never seen anything like it. When Elvis was struggling in school, bullied for being poor and different, Gladys would tell him, "You're special, baby. God has plans for you. Don't let anybody make you think you're less than you are." When Elvis wanted to pursue music and everyone else said it was a foolish dream, Gladys said, "If that's what's in your heart, you do it. I believe in you." She worked grueling jobs, sewing machine operator, nurse's aide, whatever she could find, to help keep the family afloat while Elvis chased his musical dreams. She never complained. She just believed. And when Elvis finally made it, when That's All Right played on the radio in 1954 and people started paying attention, Gladys cried tears of vindication. "I knew it," she told Vernon. "I always knew he was meant for something special." The price of success. Elvis's success should have made Gladys happy. Her son had gone from poverty to wealth. He'd bought her a nice house, given her security she'd never known, proven that her belief in him had been justified. But success came with a cost that Gladys hadn't anticipated. Elvis was gone constantly, touring, recording, performing. The boy who'd been inseparable from his mother was now traveling the country, surrounded by people she didn't know, living a life she didn't understand. Gladys started to worry obsessively. Every time Elvis left for a tour, she'd convince herself something terrible would happen. She'd stay up all night, pacing, unable to sleep until she heard his voice on the phone telling her he was okay. "Mama was never the same after I got famous," Elvis said years later. "She was proud of me, but she was also scared. She felt like she was losing me, and maybe she was right." In 1956, when Elvis was drafted into the Army, Gladys fell apart. Her son was going to Germany for 2 years. 2 years without seeing him. 2 years of worrying about him being in a foreign country. 2 years of feeling like the world had taken her baby away. The stress ate at her. She started having health problems, liver issues, high blood pressure, anxiety that manifested in physical symptoms. She started drinking to cope with the loneliness and fear. Not heavily, but enough to damage a liver that was already compromised. Doctors warned her to stop drinking, to reduce stress, to take care of herself. But how could she reduce stress when her son was thousands of miles away and she couldn't protect him? By early 1958, Gladys's health was deteriorating rapidly. She was only 46 years old, but she looked 20 years older. Her face was puffy. Her eyes were yellow. Her body was failing. Elvis, stationed in Germany, didn't know how bad it was. Gladys didn't want to worry him. She'd write cheerful letters talking about how proud she was, how she was fine, how he should focus on his duties and not worry about her. But Vernon knew. And in August 1958, Vernon made the call he'd been dreading. "Son, you need to come home. Your mom is in the hospital. It's bad. The emergency leave." Elvis got emergency leave from the Army and flew home to Memphis on August 12, 1958. When he arrived at Methodist Hospital and saw his mother, he nearly collapsed. Gladys looked nothing like the mother he'd left behind. She'd lost significant weight. Her skin was yellow from jaundice. Her eyes were sunken. She could barely speak. Elvis sat beside her bed holding her hand, crying. "Mama, I'm here. I'm home. You're going to be okay." Gladys tried to smile. "My beautiful boy, you came home." "Of course I came home. You think I'd stay in Germany when you need me? You're supposed to be serving your country." "You're my country, Mama. You're everything." The doctors told Elvis privately that Gladys had acute hepatitis, complicated by liver damage from alcohol and years of stress. Her prognosis was grim, days, maybe a week at most. Elvis refused to accept it. "There has to be something you can do. Surgery, medicine, something. I have money. I'll pay anything." "Mr. Presley, this isn't about money. Your mother's liver is failing. We're doing everything we can to make her comfortable." "Comfortable? I don't want her comfortable. I want her alive." But Elvis knew, deep down, that this was the end. He could see it in his mother's eyes. She was tired. She was ready. She was just holding on to say goodbye. The recording he'd made 2 weeks earlier, before flying to Germany after his previous leave, Elvis had done something he'd never told anyone about. He'd gone into a recording studio in Memphis late at night and recorded a song. Not for an album, not for release, just for his mother. The song was "Peace in the Valley," a gospel standard that Gladys loved. She'd sung it to Elvis when he was a child, comforting him when he was scared or sad. It had become their song, the musical embodiment of their bond. Elvis had recorded it with just a piano, no orchestra, no production, just his voice, raw and emotional, singing directly to the person who'd made his career possible. He'd pressed the recording onto a single acetate disc, a one-of-a-kind copy that couldn't be reproduced. He'd written on the label, "For Mama, with all my love, your baby boy, Elvis." He'd been planning to give it to her for her birthday in April 1959, but now, with her dying in a hospital bed, Elvis realized he couldn't wait. On August 13th, Elvis brought a portable record player to the hospital. The nurses tried to stop him. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Presley." But Elvis didn't care about regulations. "My mother is dying," he said quietly. "I'm going to play her a song. You can either help me or get out of my way." The nurses helped. The song that broke everyone. Elvis set up the record player beside Gladys's hospital bed. His father Vernon was there, along with Gladys's mother Minnie Mae and a few close family friends. Everyone knew something important was about to happen. Elvis placed the record on the turntable and turned to his mother. "Mama, I made this for you. I recorded it a couple weeks ago. I was saving it for your birthday, but I think you need to hear it now." Gladys's eyes, clouded with pain and medication, focused on her son. "You made something for me? Just for you. Nobody else has heard this. Nobody else ever will. This is ours." Elvis placed the needle on the record. After a brief crackle, his voice filled the small hospital room. "Oh well, I'm tired and so weary, but I must go alone." It was "Peace in the Valley," sung with more emotion than Elvis had ever put into any recording. His voice cracked on. Certain words, you could hear him crying between verses. This wasn't a performance. This was a son singing to his dying mother. As the song played, Elvis knelt beside Gladys's bed, still holding her hand. Tears streamed down his face as he watched her listen. Gladys was crying too. She mouthed the words along with Elvis's recording, her lips moving silently, her eyes never leaving her son's face. When the song reached the chorus, "There'll be peace in the valley for me someday," Elvis leaned close to his mother's ear and whispered something that only she could hear. Years later, Vernon would reveal what Elvis whispered. "Thank you for believing in me when nobody else did. Thank you for every sacrifice you made. Thank you for being the best mama a boy could ever have. I love you more than music, more than success, more than anything in this world. You're my peace in the valley, Mama. You always have been." Gladys squeezed Elvis's hand with what little strength she had left. She whispered back, barely audible, "I'm so proud of you, baby. So proud. You made all the hard times worth it." When the song ended, Elvis stayed kneeling beside the bed, his head resting on his mother's hand, sobbing. Vernon was crying. Minnie Mae was crying. The nurses standing in the doorway were crying. "That was beautiful, baby," Gladys said weakly. "That was the most beautiful thing you've ever given me. I wish I could give you more time, Mama. I wish I could fix this. You gave me everything that mattered. You gave me purpose. You gave me pride. You gave me a life worth living. I'm ready to rest now, baby. I'm ready for my peace in the valley." The final hours. Gladys died the next day, August 14th, 1958, at 3:15 a.m. Elvis was holding her hand when she took her last breath. He didn't scream or collapse. He just sat there, still holding her hand, tears running down his face, whispering over and over, "I love you, Mama. I love you, Mama. I love you, Mama." Vernon finally had to physically pull Elvis away from the bed. "Son, she's gone. We have to let the nurses do their work." Elvis stumbled out of the hospital room and into the hallway, where he collapsed against the wall and cried for 2 hours. Every time someone tried to comfort him, he'd just shake his head and say, "She was everything. She was everything." At the funeral 3 days later, Elvis was inconsolable. He threw himself on the coffin, sobbing, begging God to bring her back. It took 4 men to pull him away so the service could continue. After the burial, Elvis went home to Graceland and locked himself in his room for 3 days. He wouldn't eat. He wouldn't see anyone. He just played that recording of Peace in the Valley over and over, crying every time. On the 4th day, Vernon knocked on Elvis's door. "Son, you need to come out. You need to eat something. You need to live." "Why?" Elvis said through the door. "Everything I did was for her. Every song I sang, every show I performed, I was trying to make her proud. What's the point now? The point is that she'd want you to keep going. She'd want you to keep making music. She'd want you to live the life she sacrificed to give you." Elvis opened the door. He looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed, broken. "I don't know if I can, Daddy. I don't know if I can do this without her." "You can," Vernon said, "because she believed you could, and her belief is still with you. Have you ever lost someone who believed in you before anyone else did? Someone whose faith in you shaped who you became? Share their name in the comments. Let's honor the believers who made us possible. The recording that stayed private. Elvis kept the acetate recording of Peace in the Valley in his bedroom at Graceland for the rest of his life. He never allowed it to be copied or released. It was his and his mother's, and that's how it would stay. According to people close to Elvis, he'd play the recording on difficult days, when he was struggling with the pressure of fame, when he felt lost, when he needed to remember why he'd started singing in the first place. "I'd hear that song playing from Elvis's room," Priscilla Presley later recalled, "and I'd know he was having a hard day. That was his way of talking to his mother. That was how he kept her with him." After Elvis died in 1977, his estate found the recording among his most treasured possessions. There was a note attached in Elvis's handwriting. "This is never to be released. This was for Mama, only Mama. Keep it that way." Elvis's estate has honored that wish. The recording remains in the Graceland archives, never released commercially, never played publicly. It's perhaps the most private moment of Elvis's life, the final musical conversation between a son and his dying mother. Some Elvis historians have argued that the recording should be released so fans can hear the depth of Elvis's love for his mother, but others argue that keeping it private honors Elvis's wishes and preserves the sanctity of that moment. For now, the recording stays locked away, and maybe that's as it should be. Some moments are too sacred to share. How losing Gladys changed Elvis. Elvis was never the same after his mother died. People who knew him before and after said it was like losing half his soul. "Elvis died a little bit when Gladys died," said Red West, Elvis's longtime friend and bodyguard. "He kept performing, kept making music, kept living, but something essential was gone. The joy was gone. He was going through the motions of being Elvis Presley, but his heart wasn't fully in it anymore." Elvis started making questionable decisions after Gladys's death. He relied more heavily on prescription medications to deal with anxiety and grief. He surrounded himself with yes-men who enabled his worst impulses rather than challenging him the way Gladys had. He made career choices based on money rather than artistry. "Mama would have stopped me from doing half the things I did," Elvis said in a 1977 interview, just months before his own death. "She would have told me straight, 'Elvis, that's a bad movie,' or 'Elvis, you're not taking care of yourself.' I needed that voice. Without it, I drifted." Elvis also became obsessed with keeping Gladys's memory alive. He kept her bedroom at Graceland exactly as she'd left it. He talked about her constantly. He'd break down crying in the middle of interviews if someone mentioned her name. Elvis never processed his grief properly, said his longtime girlfriend Linda Thompson. He just carried it with him everywhere. It weighed on him. It affected every relationship he had, every decision he made. He was trying to fill a hole that couldn't be filled. The promise Elvis made. At Gladys's funeral, Elvis made a promise that he kept for the rest of his life. Standing at her grave after everyone else had left, Elvis said, "Mama, I promise I'll use the gifts you helped me discover. I promise I'll help people the way you always wanted me to. I promise I'll try to be worthy of your belief in me." And he did try. After Gladys's death, Elvis became even more generous with his charitable giving. He'd pay medical bills for strangers, buy houses for people in need, donate massive amounts to charities, often anonymously. Elvis was trying to honor his mother's memory by being the kind of person she'd raised him to be, said Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager. She'd taught him that when you're blessed, you bless others. He took that seriously. Every act of generosity was, in some way, a tribute to Gladys. Elvis also returned to gospel music with renewed passion. Gospel had been Gladys's favorite music, and after she died, Elvis recorded several gospel albums. His Hand in Mine in 1960, How Great Thou Art in 1967, He Touched Me in 1972. These albums weren't commercial decisions, they were spiritual ones. Elvis was singing the music his mother had loved, trying to connect with her through the songs they'd shared. When Elvis sang gospel, you could hear his mother in his voice, said gospel singer Jake Hess. You could hear the grief, the love, the longing to be with her again. Gospel wasn't a genre for Elvis. It was a prayer. The Mother's Day. Elvis never forgot every Mother's Day. After Gladys's death, Elvis would visit her grave and place flowers, always roses, her favorite. He'd sit there for hours talking to her, crying, telling her about his life. In 1970, on what would have been Gladys's 58th birthday, Elvis wrote her a letter. He never sent it. There was nowhere to send it, but he kept it in his Bible. After Elvis's death, the letter was found. It said, "Dear Mama, another year without you. Another year of trying to be the man you raised me to be. Another year of missing you so much, it hurts to breathe. I've tried to honor your memory. I've tried to be generous like you taught me. I've tried to use my success to help people. But Mama, I'm so tired. I'm tired of performing. Tired of being Elvis Presley. Tired of living without your voice telling me it's going to be okay. People think my life is perfect because I'm famous and rich. They don't understand that all the success in the world doesn't mean anything without you here to share it with. You were the only person who knew me before I was Elvis. The only person who loved me for who I was, not what I could do. I hope you're proud of me, Mama. I hope you're at peace in that valley. I hope one day I'll see you again and you'll smile at me the way you used to when I was little and I'd sing for you in our tiny house. I love you more than I've ever loved anything. I always will. Your baby boy, Elvis." What the song represented, Peace in the Valley, wasn't just a song to Elvis and Gladys. It represented everything they'd gone through together. The song talks about being tired and so weary, but believing that there'll be peace in the valley for me someday. That was Gladys's entire life, working hard, sacrificing, struggling through poverty and hardship, but always believing that better days were coming. When Gladys sang that song to young Elvis during their hardest times, she was giving him hope. When Elvis recorded it for her while she was dying, he was giving her that hope back, telling her that her struggles were over, that her peace had come. Peace in the Valley became Elvis's way of processing his mother's death. Every time he sang it in public after 1958, he was thinking about Gladys. Every time he heard it, he was transported back to that hospital room, to those final moments, to the goodbye he'd never wanted to say. Music critics have noted that Elvis's performances of Peace in the Valley after his mother's death had a depth and emotion that his earlier versions lacked. He wasn't just singing a gospel song anymore. He was singing his grief, his love, his longing. When Elvis sang Peace in the Valley after Gladys died, one critic wrote, he wasn't performing, he was praying. He was reaching across the boundary between life and death, trying to tell his mother one more time that he loved her. If you could record one song for someone you love, knowing they might not be here much longer, what song would it be? And who would you dedicate it to? Share in the comments. Sometimes we need to tell people what they mean to us before it's too late. The legacy of a mother's love. Gladys Presley lived only 46 years. She spent most of those years in poverty, working jobs that broke her body, worrying about her son, sacrificing her own comfort for his dreams. But her legacy is immeasurable because Gladys believed in Elvis when nobody else did. She supported his musical dreams when everyone else said they were foolish. She gave him the foundation of faith, love, and confidence that made everything else possible. Without Gladys, there would be no Elvis Presley. Not because she gave birth to him, but because she gave him belief in himself, belief in his gifts, belief that he was meant for something special. Every song Elvis ever sang carried a piece of Gladys in it. Every act of generosity was a reflection of her teachings. Every moment of vulnerability was possible because she'd shown him that strength includes gentleness. "People ask what made Elvis special," said Gordon Stoker of the Jordanaires, who sang backup for Elvis for years. "They want to know if it was his voice or his looks or his charisma, but really it was his mother." Gladys gave Elvis something most performers never have. She gave him a reason to sing. He was singing for her approval, for her pride, for her love. When she died, he was still singing for her. He never stopped. What this story teaches us. August 13th, 1958. A son sat beside his dying mother's hospital bed and played her a song he'd recorded just for her. It wasn't for fans. It wasn't for money. It wasn't for fame. It was for the person who'd believed in him before anyone else had. That's love. Pure, unconditional, sacrificial love. Gladys gave everything for Elvis. Her time, her energy, her health, her life. She worked jobs that destroyed her body so her son could chase his dreams. She worried herself sick when he became famous and traveled the world. She drank to cope with the loneliness and fear which destroyed her liver and killed her at 46. Was it worth it? Would Gladys do it again if she could go back? Every indication suggests yes, because Gladys didn't measure her life by what she got. She measured it by what she gave. And what she gave was a son who changed music forever, who touched millions of lives, who used his gifts to bring joy and help others. That's the legacy of a mother's love. Not perfect, not without cost, but willing to sacrifice everything for her child's success. How many of us have people like that in our lives? People who believed in us before we believed in ourselves. People who sacrificed sacrificed their comfort for our dreams, people who gave everything so we could have something, and how many of us have properly thanked them. Elvis recorded a song for his mother while she was dying, but what he really gave her was validation. The knowledge that her sacrifices hadn't been in vain, that her belief had been justified, that her son had become everything she'd hoped he would be. Who in your life needs to hear that? Who needs to know that their belief in you mattered, that their sacrifices weren't wasted, that you're grateful for everything they gave? Don't wait until they're dying in a hospital bed. Don't wait until it's too late to say the words or sing the song or give the gesture that tells them they matter. Elvis recorded Peace in the Valley for Gladys 2 weeks before she died, but he wished he'd recorded it 2 years before, 20 years before, given her more time to know how much he appreciated her. Learn from his regret. Tell your Gladys now, while they can still hear it, while they can still smile and say, "I'm proud of you, baby." Because the greatest tribute to those who believed in us is to live lives worthy of their belief, and to make sure they know, before it's too late, that we couldn't have done it without them. From Mama, for Peace in the Valley. Subscribe to Elvis Presley Legacy Stories to discover more moments that prove the people who believe in us shape everything we become. Share this story with someone who believed in you before anyone else did. Let them know they're your piece in the valley. And if you still have the chance, tell your mother, or whoever filled that role, that you love them, that you're grateful, that everything good in your life exists because they believed in you first. Because Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, the biggest star in the world, only became possible because one woman named Gladys loved her son enough to believe in his impossible dream. Who believed in yours?